In a vast and serene field, there was an old tree that dominated the landscape. It was imposing, its roots deeply embedded in the soil, and its branches wide and welcoming, stretched out like open arms to the sky. To everyone around it, it seemed as if that tree had always been there and always would be. A symbol of strength, stability, and beauty, it provided shade for the animals of the field and was home to small birds that made their nests in its safe heights. That day, like so many others, the field was calm. The sky, a clear and clean blue, seemed to promise peace. The rabbits hopped among the bushes, and a light breeze swayed the leaves of the old tree, creating a soft melody that lulled the small insects around it. Everything seemed perfect, unchanging, as if that scene could never be disturbed. But what no one saw, not even the tree, was that on the horizon something was beginning to change. A line of dark clouds was forming, almost imperceptible at first, but gaining strength and shape with each passing moment. Nature, always silent in its omens, brought signs of what was to come. The birdsong ceased, the small animals of the field sought shelter, and the wind, which had previously been a gentle breeze, began to take on a more aggressive tone. The old tree remained still, as it had done for decades. It was firm, confident in its strength and the depth of its roots. For it, the world around it could change, but it, with all its robustness, would never be shaken. After all, it had withstood time, droughts, torrential rains, and the winds that occasionally passed by. The day went on like any other, until the sky began to close in. The soft light gave way to an opaque gray that swallowed up the blue of the sky. The wind turned into gusts that blew hard, bending the grass in the field in frantic waves. Small branches began to break off and fly through the air. The tree, which had been serene until then, now felt the first sign of restlessness. It was not just another wind or a simple rain. Something bigger was approaching, something that would test everything it believed itself to be. At that moment the field, once so full of life and movement, seemed like an abandoned scene, with the old tree as the only witness to the arrival of the storm. It did not know it yet, but its strength, although undeniable, would be challenged in ways it had never experienced before. The storm arrived like a furious scream from the sky. The black clouds, once a distant threat, now dominated everything, covering the field like a heavy blanket. The wind roared, fierce and relentless, as if it wanted to tear the very earth from its place. The old tree felt, for the first time in a long time, a tension run through its trunk. It was unusual for something to shake its confidence, but this was no ordinary wind. It was something bigger, more powerful, something that respected neither its longevity nor its strength. The first blow came with a sharp hiss. A gust so strong that dozens of leaves fell off the tree, scattering through the air like an uncontrolled swarm. The highest branches shook violently, and even the thickest ones began to creak in protest. The grass in the field seemed to want to lie down on the ground, as if in reverence to the fury of the wind. Small stones and broken branches swirled in the air, creating a chaotic spectacle of destruction. The old tree remained standing, but not without effort. Its structure, which had always been rigid, now had to yield to the incessant movement of the wind. It bent, leaned, but refused to break. Inside it, something seemed to awaken, a silent and resilient strength, as if its roots were whispering to it not to give up. However, each gust was a struggle. The wind did not just blow, it tore, pushed, forced. It was as if the storm had decided to prove that nothing, not even that ancient tree, could resist. The rain arrived shortly after, as if to reinforce the attack. Large drops fell with force, soaking the ground and running down the trunk of the tree. The earth around it began to turn to mud, and its roots, although deep, felt the soil giving way. With each moment, it had to fight against gravity, clinging tighter to the ground that supported it. Even so, the tree did not allow itself to be intimidated. No matter how violently it was shaken, no matter how much its branches snapped and its leaves were scattered by the wind, there was something unbreakable about it. It was as if it were saying to itself, "I am more than this. I am more than leaves, more than branches. My strength lies in what no one can see." The storm seemed to understand the challenge. The fury of the wind increased, and thunder boomed in the sky, as if celebrating each new blow. The tree was being tested to its limit. Its strength was not just physical, it was an internal struggle, a battle of resilience. Each minute seemed to last an eternity, and each gust brought with it the doubt, could it be that? The branches, which had once seemed indestructible, also began to show signs of weakness. Some would snap loudly and then fall to the ground with a hollow, mournful sound. Each loss felt like a wound, but the tree knew that these sacrifices were inevitable. If it continued to fight the force of the storm with everything it had, it would eventually be toppled. It had to give in to resist. As the wind roared and the rain pounded, the tree found a way to fight without directly facing the fury of the storm. Instead of stiffening against the wind, it bent over, allowing the gusts to pass over it. Its uppermost branches, even bare of leaves, swayed like desperate dancers, but they did not break. The tree had learned the art of adapting. On the ground around it, the scene was desolate. Leaves formed a soggy carpet of water, broken branches were scattered everywhere, and the countryside seemed unrecognizable. The tree, which had once been a majestic figure, was now almost unrecognizable. Its trunk was scratched by the fury of the wind, its extremities were devoid of life, and its roots, although invisible, struggled against the sodden soil to maintain their position. But even so, it stood. With each blow of the storm, the tree felt that something inside it grew stronger. It was not a visible strength, but an inner certainty that its essence was not in the leaves it had lost or the branches that had broken. Its true strength was in its base, in the silent connection with the earth that supported it. This was what kept it standing when everything around it seemed to be crumbling. The storm continued, merciless, but the tree no longer faced it with despair. It had accepted that some losses were necessary to survive. With each leaf that fell and each branch that broke, the tree felt that it was, in a way, renewing itself. It was no longer the same person who had started that peaceful day in the field. She was now a survivor, a fighter who understood the value of giving up in order to preserve what was essential. Finally, the storm began to lose its strength. The wind gradually died down, the rain went from a deluge to a steady drizzle, and silence began to return to the field. The old tree was exhausted, wounded, but intact in its essence. It had lost much, but it had preserved what really mattered: its connection to the soil, its ability to resist, its resilience. As the first rays of sunlight reappeared on the horizon, the tree looked around, or rather, felt what was left around it. It was no longer the same as before. It was a rawer, simpler version, but also stronger. Every loss it had suffered had been a choice, proof that sometimes sacrificing the superficial is what allows us to keep what really matters. When the timid sun began to illuminate the field again, the old tree was still there, standing. However, it was no longer the majestic figure that had dominated the landscape earlier that day. Its leaves were almost completely gone, broken branches were scattered around it, and its trunk bore the marks of its encounter with the storm. To those looking from a distance, it might have looked beaten, even defeated. But what no one saw was the true secret of its survival: its roots. Below the surface, far from the eyes of the world, the roots of the old tree had played a crucial role. They were deeply connected to the earth, so deeply that not even the most violent winds could uproot them. Every fiber underground had resisted, clinging tightly to the sodden soil, as if to say, "You can take my leaves, my branches, but I will remain here." The strength of the tree lay not in its appearance, but in what was invisible. During the storm, as its branches bent and its leaves fell, its roots worked silently. Some sought water to sustain it, even under the deluge, while others anchored themselves even deeper into the soil, resisting the mud that tried to loosen their base. It was they who gave the tree the confidence that no matter how much it was shaken, it would not be knocked down. This invisible strength was not something the tree had acquired overnight. During years of calm, while it seemed to only grow upward, its roots had grown downward, seeking nutrients, water, and stability. Every moment of sunshine, every drop of rain, had contributed to building the robust network that was now its salvation. The storm only revealed what was already there. As the day dawned and the field slowly returned to its routine, the old tree began to feel something new. Although bare and scarred, it was alive. Every lost leaf, every broken branch, was a reminder that it had faced something powerful and still stood there. The unseen force, which many might ignore, had been its greatest ally. The field around it reflected the devastation. When silence took over the countryside, and the chaos of the storm gave way to calm, the old tree remained there, like a guardian of resistance. The next day arrived bringing timid rays of sunlight, which illuminated the damage left by the fury of the winds and rain. The landscape that was once vibrant was unrecognizable. Branches, leaves and flowers were scattered across the ground as witnesses of the battle that had been fought. However, in the center of all that destruction, the tree remained standing, scarred, but standing. It was no longer the same. The leaves that once danced with the wind had disappeared, the tallest and most imposing branches were broken or injured, and its trunk bore visible scars from the clash. To those passing by, it might have seemed defeated, but inside it there was something completely different. The storm, which seemed to want to destroy it, had in fact left a gift, a lesson that would change the way it saw life forever. The tree understood that true strength was not in its appearance or the number of leaves it had. Its strength came from something deeper, more intimate, its roots. While the wind screamed and the rain pounded, its roots had done the heavy lifting. No matter how much the surface was battered, what really mattered was below ground, where no one could see. The storm had shown it that everything it thought was essential, leaves, branches, external beauty, was actually secondary. What really mattered was the invisible, what connected it to the earth and gave it stability. As the days passed, the tree began to realize something even more extraordinary. Loss also brought renewal. Its leaves, now lying on the ground, slowly integrated into the soil, transforming into nutrients that would strengthen its roots. The broken branches would make room for new growth, and the scars on its trunk would become symbols of its ability to survive. The storm's destruction was not an end, but a beginning, a chance to start over, stronger and wiser. The surrounding countryside began to change, too. Small signs of life began to appear again. The birds, once frightened, began to rebuild their nests. The flowers, even crushed, left seeds that were already beginning to germinate. The field understood the natural cycle of life. Chaos brings renewal, and destruction is often the prelude to rebirth. And the tree, as part of that ecosystem, was part of that process. She realized that her story was not just about resistance, but about transformation. Yes, she had lost a lot, but she had gained something invaluable, the certainty of her inner strength. More than that, the storm taught her that losses are not the end. They are part of the journey and shape us to become stronger. Each leaf that fell was a reminder that sometimes we have to let go of what we can no longer carry in order to stand firm. The tree knew that other storms would come. The sky would not always be blue, and the wind would not always be a gentle breeze. But now, she was more prepared. Not because she was stronger physically, but because she knew where her true strength lay. She was not afraid of loss, because she understood that she could always start over. Her presence in the field became a symbol for all who observed her. For the birds, she was a reliable home. For the small animals, she was a safe haven. And for the field itself, she was a reminder that life goes on, even after the worst storms. The tree became a living metaphor for resilience, teaching that even when we are stripped of everything, what really matters, our roots, our essence, remains. In the end, the storm was not an enemy. It was a teacher, a force of nature that came to test, shape, and transform. And the old tree, which had previously seemed just a static element of the field, became living proof that no matter how strong the wind, what is rooted deep within our being is what keeps us standing. The lesson of the storm was clear. We are not defined by what we lose, but by what we manage to preserve, and most of all, by what we learn to rebuild. And so the old tree, now scarred and bare, became more than a survivor. It became an example. So, did you like this story? If there's one thing the old tree teaches us, it's that when the winds of life get strong, it's not what's on the surface that sustains us, but what's rooted deep inside us. So always take care of your roots, your values, your connections, and everything that keeps you strong even in difficult times. Because, in the end, That's what makes all the difference. Now, I want to hear from you. What helps you stay strong in your storms? Leave it here in the comments. I'd love to read your answer. Oh, and don't forget, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like so I know you'll like it.